നമസ്കാരം. കേരളത്തിൽ നിന്നുള്ള ആദ്യത്തെ ട്രൈലിംഗ്വൽ പോർട്ടലായ ത്രിഭാഷാ പോർട്ടലായ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ്, മലയാളം, ഹിന്ദി ഭാഷകളിൽ പരിപാടികൾ അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്ന ദി ഐഡമിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഗ്ലോബൽ സ്പെഷ്യൽ സ്റ്റോറിയിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. റഷ്യ ഉക്രൈൻ യുദ്ധം 75-ാം ദിവസം പിന്നിടുമ്പോൾ ദി ഐഡമിൻ്റെ എഡിറ്റോറിയൽ അഡ്വൈസറായ വിശ്വപ്രശസ്ത പത്രപ്രവർത്തകൻ സയീദ് നഖ്വിക്ക് റഷ്യൻ പ്രസിഡന്റ് വ്ളാദിമിർ പുതിൻ്റെ ഉപദേശകരിൽ പ്രധാനിയായ വലേറി ഫദീവ് നൽകിയ ദീർഘമായ അഭിമുഖ സംഭാഷണത്തിലേക്കാണ് നിങ്ങളെ സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നത്. റഷ്യനിലും ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലും പരിഭാഷയടക്കം നടത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള 1 മണിക്കൂർ നീണ്ട ഈ സൂം ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ യുദ്ധം 75-ാം ദിവസത്തിലേക്ക് കടക്കുമ്പോൾ എന്ത് തരത്തിലാണ് റഷ്യ അതിനെ നോക്കിക്കാണുന്നത്, യൂറോപ്പിലും ലോകത്തും ഈ യുദ്ധത്തിൻ്റെ പ്രത്യാഘാതങ്ങൾ എന്തായിരിക്കുമെന്ന് ഫദീവ് വിശദീകരിക്കുന്നു. സയീദ് നഖ്വിയെപ്പോലെ ലോകമെമ്പാടും അറിയപ്പെടുന്ന നെൽസൺ മണ്ടേലയും ഗോർബച്ചേവിനെയും ഫിഡൽ കാസ്ട്രോവിനെയും ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള സയീദ് നഖ്വി ഈ മുഖാമുഖത്തിൽ ഈ യുദ്ധത്തിൻ്റെ വിവിധ വശങ്ങൾ പരിശോധിക്കുന്നു. മുഖാമുഖത്തിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം.
Welcome to our interview, Mr. Fadayev. The first thing that the world is wanting to know is what is the mystery of Mariupol and the Azov steel plant? Why is it such a secrecy around it? Please give us the secrets.
So there isn't a huge secret. The Azovstal factory was a base for some national battalions, and in particular the Azov battalion. These battalions are very motivated because they consist of Nazi followers. These battalions, they study Nazi ideology, and one of their heroes, one of their intellectual heroes is Hitler, and they celebrate personalities such as Bandera. Stepan Bandera is a criminal and an internationally acknowledged criminal, and he took part in the murder of thousands of people, including Russians, Ukrainians, and Jews. The reason the Azov battalions are not leaving this steel factory is that they are hoping to receive help from other countries. There's a lot of evidence that they have committed war crimes, and they're afraid that they will have to face punishment for these war crimes.
Is it just them? I believe a Canadian general has been arrested. I believe some people from the West, some army and intelligence officers and special forces and Blackwater and all these are these rumors, or is there some truth?
Это не слухи. Это так и есть.
Those are not rumors, that is the truth, and it shows just how much Western countries took part in preparing the Ukrainian army for this conflict, and how they supplied weapons and intelligence to Ukrainian battlemen, and just how involved they are, that they are even fighting on their side.
I'm asking specifically, has a Canadian general been arrested, and is Mr. Macron is calling up President Putin so many times? Is it about some French officers who are there in Azov steel plant?
I'm afraid I cannot comment on these rumors, since I am not part of the military and do not have access to this information. I'm in charge of other matters.
But what I'm asking are pertinent questions. At least you can accept that.
I accept that, but unfortunately, I do not have an answer about the French soldiers. And we can see how these dangerous ideas are affecting the people in Ukraine, and how the people of Ukraine are denying the USSR's victory, this common victory that we achieved together, and how dangerous this is as a precedent, how it affects modern history. These historical lies are dividing society, and we can see how that is happening in Ukraine right now.
Is it possible that on Victory Day, some of these people who are hiding in the Azov steel plant will have been identified and revealed to the world?
I do not think that Victory Day has anything to do with the special operation in Ukraine, and that there will be some special operations that will happen on this particular day.
Operations on this day.
I am not a general, so I don't know.
Quote one general, General Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary, said at the committee for NATO's committee for Ukraine, he said, "We want to weaken Russia." The war aim was declared openly. We want to weaken Russia. Why? What is your response?
The first time this was announced was by President Putin in 2007 during his speech during the München conference. Starting from the 90s and in the 2000s, Russia was willing to cooperate with the West, cooperate in different spheres and areas, and we even mentioned that we were ready to join NATO at one point, and this was discussed even during President Putin's time, but each and every time the West told us no. So these last years, we spent a lot of time discussing safety, Russian safety, and this is a very important issue for us. And since I myself have served in the rocket troops, I know just what it means to have rockets so close to our borders. And we have spoken time and time again that if Ukraine joins NATO, then it would take a rocket about approximately 5 minutes to reach Moscow from Kharkov. Putin called it a knife at your neck. But the West refused to discuss this most important problem with us. Instead, it kept strengthening the Ukrainian army located at the borders with Donbass, and they were aiming to
attack
Donbass.
Yes. Sir,
capture it back.
Is it because the military-industrial complex in the United States after the collapse of Soviet Union first targeted Islamic terror and now is aiming at the friendship of, they are nervous about the rise of China and China's friendship without end with Russia. Is that what is threatening Pax Americana?
I think it is not just the military-industrial complex that is to blame. I think that the American elites, which include members of the military-industrial complex, are to blame for this. They were hoping that Russia would cease to exist as a global power after the collapse of the USSR, but Russia it didn't have friends exactly, but it had some strong allies that supported Russia starting from the 90s. And that were against the West being the only global power on the arena. Of course, you mentioned that Russia and China have allied in the past. Russia can play an important part in America's conflict with China, possible conflict. Confrontation. Russia could play a major role in a possible confrontation between the U.S. and China.
Between the U.S. and China. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU chief, says this, quote, this is a war we cannot, must not, should not lose. In other words, we must win. What do you say?
I believe that the U.S. has the final say in this decision because Europe is suffering greatly under the sanctions. In some ways, the U.S. is interested in a weaker Europe because I would like to remind you that Europe has been discussing the creation of a separate European army for the last 30 years, and of course the U.S. wouldn't want something like that.
Can you, Mr. Fadayev, outline a formula for peace to end this war?
The Ukrainian army must disarm itself. Only that would guarantee the safety of the people of Donbass and also some other regions now.
So you want a completely disarmed Ukraine?
Yes, this is what President Putin has announced on February 24th, because a militarized Ukraine is a great danger for Russia.
Right. This is an invitation, this kind of an invitation, Mr. Fadayev, it is an invitation to the Americans to keep sending arms and money into Ukraine because they imagine they want to bleed you the way they did in Afghanistan and the way they did themselves bled in Afghanistan.
Well, I would like to remind you that the war in Afghanistan lasted for 10 years, and they weren't able to fully bleed Russia then, and we left the country because of a political decision, not a military one. And I believe that that was a mistake at the time.
All right. Are Israeli soldiers fighting alongside the Ukrainian army? There are some reports of Israelis fighting alongside. Are they official soldiers or are they conscripts?
Я думаю, что это наемники.
We believe that those are mercenaries, and there are mercenaries from various different countries fighting in Ukraine right now. And
на Украине, на стороне украинской армии. И такая информация есть, и даже пленные, есть британские пленные, но это все-таки наемники.
At one stage, sir, Russia and Iran, both, and other countries were making open statements that terrorists from Syria were being flown to Afghanistan. Is that still continuing, and is that another pressure point being developed by the West?
On the one hand, the whole world saw the disgraceful the disgraceful way the Americans left Afghanistan, but at the same time, that could have been a conscious decision so that they could leave the country in the arms of the Taliban, who could continue to work with other radical groups.
Это очень серьезная ситуация. Я напомню, что
I would like to remind you that after the collapse of the USSR, there has been a war in Tajikistan, and that war involved some radical
в
groups.
этой войне участвовали радикальные исламские группировки в Таджикистане.
And also, Uzbekistan had an influx of terrorist groups, and there were terrorist acts in the very center of the city near government buildings. Those terrorists were defeated in part, also partly by the Russian troops, and now nobody wants a repeat of that. Nobody wants to see terrorist organizations on the rise in these regions.
After Ukraine, is Pax Americana finished or is it revived?
Этот процесс завершения гегемонии, он занимает десятилетия.
So it is impossible to end the hegemony immediately. It takes many years to do so. And when the U.S. started the Iraqi war, then my friend also told me that this is the end of the U.S. hegemony, but that was 20 years ago. So it is a long process.
Потому что США не могут выиграть войну в Ираке. Это началось 20 лет назад.
I think that we should expect a very hard time ahead of us, tens of years, because it is very hard to create a new world and to end the U.S. hegemony.
Это сложнейший процесс. Обратите внимание, 2/3 мира, если считать население стран,
I would like to note that 2/3 of the world's population lives in countries that do not support the sanctions against Russia. And that shows just how the U.S. is losing its influence on the world arena right now.
Это очень серьезный знак того, что мир теперь не будет таким, каким он был раньше. Почему так? Потому что в этих странах люди помнят колониальные времена.
This is because these parts of the world, they still remember the colonial era. For example, China still remembers the Opium Wars of 1840, and the role Britain, the British Empire, played in that. And this just shows the arrogance of the West, that they still believe that these parts of the world will listen to them.
Отторгает большую часть мира от Запада.
Yeah. Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary during George W. Bush's time, used to separate New Europe from Old Europe. He thought that countries like Poland, etc., were the New Europe, and that countries like France and Germany and Italy, etc., are Old Europe. Is that contradiction between New Europe and Old Europe sharpening?
Я думаю, что в Европе увлеклись расширением Европейского Союза.
So the UN was so into its extension that it ignored many problems, and it got busy with success and didn't address many of the problems that existed between the so-called Old Europe and New Europe. And so in this regard, I agree with Rumsfeld.
Принятие в Европейский Союз новых стран. И тогда этих противоречий бы не было. А эти противоречия, они очевидны, и здесь можно согласиться с Rumsfeldом.
How demoralizing was the sinking of the Moskva for you?
I don't think you could call it demoralizing. I would say it was sad.
Печаль.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Is the war, according to you, from what I understand, you see this war could last for years? Is that true? Have I understood you right?
No, I certainly hope not. I didn't say that it could take years. The conflict between Russia and the West could take years, but the special operation in Ukraine will probably end soon.
Полагаю, завершится в обозримое время.
That is the confusion that is being created. That is the confusion which is being created. Their Western allies accuse you, America and their Western allies accuse you of war crimes. What is your response? In fact, I can add a little bit. I have a lot of literature from your office showing what the Ukrainians have been doing in the Donbass area and how they've been terrorizing the Russians and so on. There are plenty of, but the images etched on the people's minds is Bucha. How are we going to fight this media war?
Во-первых, все-таки не весь мир.
Well, I wouldn't say that the whole world, but if we talk about the Western media, then of course we can say that the Western media is another weapon in the hands of the Western government.
И мы не можем изменить сегодня эту ситуацию. Нужны новые идеи. Вы предложили одну из идей сегодня в начале разговора.
And unfortunately, there is no way to change that right now, but we must look for new ideas, like the idea that you proposed at the beginning.
Свободных медиа, как они существовали десятилетия раньше на Западе, их больше нет.
Thank you so much. Before I end, one final question. What can you tell the world that the world is wanting to know, and it does not know at the moment. The headline. What will be tomorrow's headline that you are giving me?
Я на днях встречался с волонтерами.
Recently I spoke with Russian volunteers who work with refugees from Ukraine and Donbass in the Belgorod Oblast of Russia.
Украины, а также республик Донбасса.
And I'm sure you know that the Ukrainian propaganda says that these people are forcibly being removed from Ukraine and brought to Russia. But that is a lie. But not only is it a lie, but also
У этих людей есть разные паспорта. У некоторых паспорта.
And all of these people, they have different passports. Some of them have the DNR and the LNR passports. Some of them have Russian passports. Some of them have Ukrainian passports. And all of them receive the same amount of help. And this shows pure humanism. That nobody is being judged by the passport they hold.
Несмотря на те тяжелые события, которые происходят на Украине.
That's right. That's right. Well, sir, one final that the world wants to know again is how is Putin's health? There have been in the Western media.
Я думаю, что это.
There's an old joke from Odessa.
Есть старый анекдот одесский. Скажите одесский, старый одесский анекдот.
So an old man walks down the street and everybody asks him how his health is, and he says, "Nope, not today."
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to your now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.